Hi guys. I wanted to share some thoughts about a book that I finished about a month ago or so, but only got around to writing a review about very recently. And that book is one by Saul Bellow, as you can tell by the title of the video, and it is Saul Bellow's More Die of Heartbreak. It's a full-length novel, and you might remember when I posted a review of Saul Bellow's Heartbreak last year. I thought it was probably, I don't know if I mentioned this in the body of the review or not, but it was probably one of the best books that I read in 2012. This book, which was published about 25 years later, in 1987 actually, I thought left a lot to be desired. So it continues thematically a lot of Bellow's ideas, his major concerns, that you see running all throughout his novels. You see ideas like sort of the sordid private lives of intellectuals, college professors, especially their romantic relationships, mixed in with a pretty heady dose of the ideas that these people live in and work with. The book mostly traces the lives of two of these kinds of people, two intellectuals, by the name of Kenneth Trachtenberg is one, and he's a Russian studies professor who has moved from Paris to the Midwest to be at his uncle's university. And then there's his uncle, whose name is Ben Crater. Ben with two N's, B-E-N-N, who is a pretty renowned botanist, or a world-famous botanist, or as Bellow cheekily puts it, a plant mystic. So Ben, while he's had a really phenomenally successful career, as you might expect in a Bellow novel, is pretty clueless about his romantic life. He just can't make the two seem to dovetail in a desirable way. And Kenneth mercilessly dissects his private failures throughout the novel in a way that almost makes you question Kenneth's supposed reverence for his uncle. He repeatedly brings up, not to Ben in conversation, but to the actual audience who's reading the novel, this one-time sexual encounter that Ben had with an older woman who happened to be drunk at the time, who Ben said he wasn't attracted to, but he slept with her anyway. And she's really exasperated when he then seems uninterested in her romantic intentions and come-ons later. And she asks him over and over again, what am I supposed to do with my sexuality? What am I supposed to do with my sexuality? As if Ben could answer this, or even if he could, that he would be able to sort of do so in a socially acceptable, not awkward way. Later he meets a woman named Carolyn, who manages to be both simultaneously aloof and overbearing at the same time, and later still he meets a woman by the name of Matilda Layamon, who wants an older, intelligent man, and Ben ends up marrying her without Kenneth's knowledge. Kenneth, unsurprisingly, has romantic problems of his own. While Ben is planning a wedding to Carolyn, he's visiting Trekkie, an unusual name that I'd never heard before, actually, who is an ex of his with whom he had one child, but never married. He notices that since the breakup with Trekkie, she has begun living with a man whose physicality and sexual aggressiveness in bed has left her legs bruised, black and blue. And this is something that Kenneth said he always refused to do, but apparently Trekkie wants this and finds it desirable. The real pitfall of the novel for me is where Bellow's exploration of Matilda's father's shady business dealings. And he talks about this a lot. Excuse me. Matilda's father is referred to as the doctor throughout the novel. He's actually a medical doctor. And he's done very, very, very well for himself, not just in his practice, but throughout these private business dealings, which don't get too much detail thrown on them, but from what little we know, they're less than savory. Excuse me. So, the doctor, who is Matilda's dad, purchased Ben's mother's house for pennies on the dollar, only to have him and his friends, especially a friend by the name of Voxer, greatly profit from it. And too much of the novel, I think, is spent discussing how Matilda's father plans to make things right by Ben by seeing that he receives a lot of this money so that Matilda can actually get the wealthy husband that she deserves. I thought it prevented this rich, deep conversation about the complexities of human relationships from being even deeper and even richer. And as I got further into the book, it seemed like the side story of how the doctor made his living by screwing over Ben's mother and her children, including Ben, became more central, and because of that I sort of became less interested in how the story was progressing. On another note, I'm completely different now. I'm not usually one to run toward very facile interpretations, which read a novel as a barely veiled version of the author's own life. I think plenty of authors get that done to them. Philip Roth is probably a really good contemporary example. But resisting that temptation is very, very tough with this book. One can easily see in Bellow the same kind of really capacious intellect and rapacity for the history of ideas that we see in Ben Crater and Kenneth, and consequently maybe the same lack of social and sexual sang-froid. Bellow himself actually married 5 times, and 2 of those marriages lasted for only about 3 years apiece. Caroline, Trekkie, and Matilda could easily be versions of Bellow's real-life romantic attachments, but even if they were, his trenchant analysis of romantic human needs and desires doesn't stop with them. He's just as critical of the needs of the cool and detached Ben and Kenneth, which presumably, if this was a sort of parallelism with his own life, he would be Ben and Kenneth, right? The sort of bookish, nerdy, intellectual figures. I don't think this is one of Bellow's masterpieces for a few of the reasons that I tried to describe, as I would openly admit that Herzog is. Augie March and Humboldt's Gift seem equally important, even though I've read neither one. But if you have an affinity for Bellow's writing, this might be something you want to check out. 1987's More Die of Heartbreak by Saul Bellow.